This is Corolla Digital.
My vigilant listeners, we like hearing from you, so keep on sending your tweets and comments. We read every one of them. And don't miss the chance to take the listener survey at podcast1.com. Your responses will help us to make this show the very best it can be. It'll only take about 3 minutes of your time. Tell us how you feel about the show and help us get to know you better. Do it now. Take the survey at podcast1.com. That's podcast1.com. Keep those tweets and comments coming, and remember, stay vigilant. This is We the People. What is wrong with our country? I don't want to believe what you believe, and you can't make me. I want to hear why it's bad to feel good. These two political gangs don't have your best interest in mind. Makes me proud to be an American. Makes me even smarter to be off the grid. Stay vigilant, people. Abraham, light up that joint. Welcome back, vigilant listeners, to another edition of We the People with Jesse Ventura. I'm your host, Jesse Ventura, and we've got over an hour of current events ahead to discuss today. I welcome the always candid Alan Colmes to the show. But first, let's get to the latest headlines with my vigilant producer, Alex Logan. Alex, what's the latest headlines?
Well, Governor Obama is back at the White House this week after 2 weeks of vacation spent at Martha's Vineyard. Faced a wave of criticism for taking some time off and the ongoing conflict in Iraq and Syria, amid the ongoing conflict in Iraq and Syria, and the beheading of American journalist James Foley. Criticized for being away from Washington under the circumstances, Obama took time away from his vacation to deliver statements on Iraq and Foley 4 times. But this had been scheduled before those issues came to light. And he still managed to squeeze in 9 rounds of golf while shrugging the criticism about how he is spending his time. So should Obama be allowed time off, or should he have to come back to Washington preceding the beheading of James Foley?
Well, would it have made a difference for him to be in Washington? I don't think so. The point being is this. He's not got time off. Rest assured. I was governor of Minnesota, which doesn't carry near the responsibility as being president. And even when you're on vacation, you're not. Do you think for one moment he's not being briefed on a daily basis while he's on vacation? Yes, he is. Do you think if anything occurred that required his immediate attention, he would end his vacation? Yes, he would. Give the guy a break. Come on. You know, everybody deserves a little time off at some point in time, and I have sympathy for him because I love golf. He deserved to shoot 9 rounds. What the hell? He can be out there. Why do you think they make cell phones and all that stuff? It isn't like he's out of touch and on the dark side of the moon with Pink Floyd. You know, that's ridiculous. All that is politics at its worst, nitpicking bullshit.
Well, as Ken Walsh at U.S. News and World Report states, it's not that Obama has taken unusually large amounts of time off. He's taken a total of 129 full or partial vacation days so far, while George W. Bush took 381 days at a comparable point in his presidency.
So George Bush took over a year off at this point of his presidency, right?
381 days.
Yeah, because a year's 365, right?
Right.
Yeah, so George Bush literally took a whole year off. Where were the bitching about at that? You know? I mean, give me a break. Obama's taken 129 at this point and Bush 381. And I suppose the griping's coming from the Republicans, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, I got news for those repubs. When you live in a glass house, don't throw stones. How quick those Republicans forget at what a horseshit president George Bush was and what a horrible VP Dick Cheney was, who spent more time on vacation than doing the jobs, ruined our economy, put us into 2 wars, and allowed 9/11 to happen. I rest my case. Republicans, shut up. You got no room to talk.
Governor, where does Burger King's Whopper land on your list of favorite fast food burgers?
Well, I don't eat fast foods, and I haven't eaten a fast food since I saw that film. What was it again that kid did? Super Size Me. When I saw Super Size Me and saw the poison that fast food is, that if you eat fast food alone, the end result is death, and it happens faster than cigarettes by about 29 years, I stopped eating at fast food, so Burger King is no more higher on my list than McDonald's. I don't eat there. Go ahead.
Well, the Whopper could be changing nationality soon. There's a fair chance it will no longer be a staple of American national pride. Instead, it could become a symbol of Canadian pride. That's right, Burger King announced it was in talks to buy Canadian coffee and donut chain Tim Hortons for $11.4 billion to create the world's third largest fast food restaurant company. There's a catch, of course, and that is that this deal would also lower its taxes. It's not clear exactly how much a combination with Tim Hortons would reduce Burger King's tax costs. A recent report by KPMG found that total tax costs in Canada are 46.4% lower than in the United States. So Burger King's already come under a lot of backlash from the public on this issue. Within 24 hours, its Facebook page had more than 1,000 negative comments on this deal. Governor, what do you make of it?
Well, that's Burger King's choice. Aren't they an international corporation, and don't they have equal rights as humans?
Right, but...
Didn't our Supreme Court say that corporations have the same rights as we do?
Right.
Well, then you got every right to go to Canada. Why can't Burger King?
And become a citizen of Canada?
If you want to.
Well, so the public isn't right. Is Burger King just trying to figure out a tax loophole, or should Burger King remain an American brand?
That's up to Burger King. I don't care. I don't eat there anyway, and I urge people not to eat that crap. Try eating good food for a change, and we wouldn't have obesity being the problem it is today. The problem we had is we're a fast food society. Fast foods is trying to move into Mexico now when I'm down there. I tell all my Mexican friends, don't eat there. Make them go away. Make them go out of business. You don't need that. Fast foods, who needs it? I quit eating fast foods decades ago and have never felt healthier in my life and less fat in my life. So all you fat Americans out there, quit bitching if one of your fat foods goes up to Canada. Wait a minute, Alex, that ought to get some response, huh? All you fat, fast food eating freaks out there that eat that crap every day, go ahead and keep eating it. I'll stay in shape the other way.
Well, we might not get Burger King back as a sponsor anymore.
Were they?
No.
Okay. Never mind. Burger King, you're wonderful. Stay in the United States. Don't go to Canada. I need you as a sponsor.
Well, here's a story that might encourage your listeners to a life living off the grid. Cell phone free. Makers of surveillance systems are offering governments across the world the ability to track the movements of anybody who carries a cell phone, whether they are nearby or far away on another continent. As the Washington Post reports, it's unclear which governments have acquired these tracking systems, but one anonymous industry official said that dozens of countries have bought or leased such technology. What are the implications of this, Governor? The surveillance industry seems like one worth getting into, right?
Oh, I'll tell you, it makes me so happy that Jesse Ventura's never owned a cell phone. So they haven't got a clue where I'm running. Why do you think I'm on their hit list? Why do you think I'm on the 10 most wanted list? And why do you think I have to be off the grid? Because I don't own a cell phone and won't allow them to put me under their surveillance. All you cell phone junkies out there, just remember, they know where you're at if you're carrying that cell phone in your back pocket. And they don't know where Jesse Ventura's at. How long do you think it'll be, Alex, before hard lines are a thing of the past and I'll have no phone at all?
Being the son of a telephone installer all my life, I mean, it's going the way of the buffalo real quick.
Really?
Yeah.
So, Alex,
he
you
got
think that
less and less.
You think I'll lose my hard line within what, 2 years, 5 years?
I'm not sure entirely. There's too many businesses that have them, but need them installed in their office. But it's not long for this earth.
All right. Well, anyway, I'll be one of the dinosaurs. Rest in peace, Jesse Ventura and his hardline phone. But at least they won't know where I'm at. All you bozos with those cell phones, how does it feel to have Big Brother right in your back pocket? How does it feel to know when you take a shower, Big Brother might be watching you? Because you might have put your cell phone on the bathroom shelf.
Well, there's some new troubling statistics about our service members and their families that have just been released. A report published by Feeding America shows that the nation's food pantries serve 620,000 families with a member in the military. This represents roughly a quarter of the household of military members on active duty, the reserves or National Guard. This statistic doesn't seem to offer much hope for those currently serving our country, does it, Governor?
Well, you know what? I love it. We all show our patriotism whenever we go to sporting events and all that. We look up at the flag and we show our patriotism and we honor our veterans and we tell all our veterans how much we love them. I got news for you, all you Iraq veterans. Welcome to Vietnam, because you're getting treated now. The only difference, they're not coming forward with nothing to take care of you. The only difference is they're giving you parades. We didn't get any. But other than that, you're getting treated the same way as the Vietnam vet and every other veteran that preceded you. When they need you, they love you. When they don't need you no more, they forget about you and they don't provide no money for you. Welcome to the club.
And it should be said that the Pentagon disputes Feeding America's findings, suggesting, according to The Nation, that its statistical definition of military households was imprecise.
Well, of course they're going to say that. Maybe it was imprecise, but you're not going to tell me it ain't happening. You're not going to tell me that the food pantries aren't serving some of our military, because rest assured, the government, when they're done with them, could care less about them. When there's not a war for them to fight, they could care less.
Well, here's some good news, Governor. As reported in Bloomberg Businessweek, and I quote, Vermont Governor Peter Shumlin, a Democrat, has urged the legislature to approve a new set of drug policies that go beyond the never-ending cat and mouse between cops and dealers. Under policies about in effect or about to take hold, people caught using or in possession of heroin will be offered the chance to avoid prosecution by enrolling in treatment. Addicts, including some prisoners, will have greater access to synthetic heroin substitutes to help them reduce their dependency on illegal narcotics or kick the habit. Sounds like someone is taking a page from your declarations on the war on drugs, right, Governor?
They're always taking it. They just never give me credit, Alex. You hear the word vigilant all the time used by everyone. Bill Maher is now on board with things I was saying 10 years ago. It just takes that long for it to sink in. This is wonderful, because my position has always been drug addiction should not be treated criminally. It's a medical problem. It should be treated medically. You can be addicted to Hostess Twinkies. You can be addicted to many, many things. I offer this up. Can you imagine for one moment, Alex, if magically tomorrow we could make coffee disappear? How many murders do you think would take place across the nation to fulfill that caffeine addiction in the morning? Quite a few, I bet, huh? How many people know people that can't function unless they get that caffeine fix as soon as they get out of bed? People better wake up to the fact that you can be addicted to many things and that many people are susceptible to addiction. And the sooner we keep treating people medically and not criminally, we will be far better off. This is a great step in the right direction. Kudos to who did this? The governor?
Governor Shumlin.
Kudos to Governor Shumlin. About time. He's late, but he's not late on getting on board. Good for him.
Well, now for some political gunslinging. Seems like potential presidential candidates are getting locked and loaded for 2016. Senator Rand Paul went on Meet the Press this past Sunday, calling Hillary Clinton a war hawk. To clarify, Paul, the leading anti-interventionist in the GOP and who is considering a run for president in 2016, stated this, and I quote, "I think that's what scares the Democrats the most, is that in a general election were I to run, there's going to be a lot of independents and even some Democrats who say, you know what? We are tired of war. We're worried that Hillary Clinton will get us involved in another Middle Eastern war because she's so gung-ho." You think Senator Paul is making his moves? Do you think he's right?
Senator Paul and I agree, because I'm tired of these wars too. And I think a great many of us here in the United States are sick and tired of being at war. I've said it so many times, counting the war on drugs, we've been at war my entire 63 years on the planet. Enough is enough. Let's get out of the Middle East. Let's close our embassies over there. And if all these oil companies need to be there, let them hire Blackwater. Let them hire the mercenaries for protection. I've had enough of our U.S. military being required to protect international corporations. It's been going on since the days of General Smedley Butler, over 100 years ago, when General Butler, the two-time Congressional Medal of Honor winner, said, "I didn't work for the American people, I worked for the United Fruit Corporation." If they didn't get cooperation, they sent in the Marines to get it. Well, it's high time we put an end to that. I stand with Rand Paul completely. And Hillary Clinton, if she's talking about waging war in all these places, then she is a warmonger, and she will not get my support. And I think Paul is correct. I think there's a great many of us in this country today. You saw what it was like when they started polling, should we go into Syria? It was overwhelmingly no. Many of us have had enough of these wars, and it's high time we get out of them for good and stay out of them. So kudos to Rand Paul for having the courage to talk about it. Okay, well, thank you for this week's headlines, and remember to check in with me at Off the Grid on Aura TV, because I know you can't get enough of me. Who the hell wrote that? Here's a few highlights from last week's shows.
Governor, everything nowadays seems to be getting blown out of proportion on a daily basis with big media. How's your relationship with big media today? What's been your overall experience?
Well, my relationship, Alex, with big media today has not been good at all. Everybody knows I just went through this horrible court case, this defamation slander case, where it was unequivocally proven that American Sniper, the chapter about me, was not true, it was fabricated, it was made up. But what did mainstream media do? Well, the verdict comes out, the jury sees all the evidence, I win hands down, and mainstream media cries foul. So they all come out criticizing the jury, and then they come back on me. Why? They didn't think I could win. I found that astounding. They didn't think I could win when I had the truth on my side. So the truth, you can't win with the truth in mainstream media or in life today? Maybe so. Because I went against a widow and a war hero, it was unsurmountable odds. But the system worked. The truth prevailed and I won, and mainstream media didn't like it. They are the entertainment business. They are not the news business. Take, for example, Fox News. Fox News falls under the entertainment division of News Corps, not the news division. You ought to pay attention to that, people.
Will we ever see shift towards telling the truth in news?
No, not as long as rating points and money are involved in the news. It's up to us, the people, to demand more. It's up to us, the people, to change. You know, look at what's happening on the internet now. People are leaving mainstream news. They're leaving it because they've been BS long enough. Now, is there a lot of BS on the internet? Absolutely. Glenn Beck's on the internet. But at least you can choose on your own, and you're not getting it spoon-fed through corporatism of television.
Well, is there anything really separating one cable news station from another? And how does the news today compare to the days of Walter Cronkite?
Look at the ads that are on TV and the advertising that go along with whatever news you're watching. And that will dictate to you what you're getting for news, because that's who's helping to pay the bill. If you see nothing but drug ads, oh, tell your doctor you need this drug. Tell your doctor you need that drug. Well, rest assured then, that news show is going to be very sympathetic to the pharmaceutical industry, because that's who's paying the freight. In the old words of Deep Throat, down in the hallowed halls of that parking lot, follow the money. Nothing can be more sincere than that. Follow the money.
And how does it compare to the days of Walter Cronkite?
Well, in the days of Walter Cronkite, they used to write the news off. The news did not make money. The expense of the news was made up for by the entertainment division. In other words, the Mary Tyler Moore Show and Lucille Ball and all that stuff. They made so much money that they had to subsidize the news, so that the news wasn't required to entertain you, it was required to inform you. And let's face it, informing you doesn't sell the way entertaining you sells. The news is now entertainment. It's not for information. For more Off the Grid, go to Aura.tv every Tuesday through Friday at 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. Now, I always enjoy taking on one guy at Fox News, and that's my next guest, Alan Colmes. I'd like to welcome one of my friends from the left to the podcast. He's a nationally syndicated host of the Alan Colmes radio show, a Fox News contributor, and publisher of Alan.com. If you haven't figured out his name at this point, we've got a problem. Welcome, Alan Colmes. And we got a problem anyway because I read those openings and I want everyone to know I'm not responsible for that. I simply read them. Alan, let's, first of all, it's great to have you on. I always enjoy doing your radio show out in New York when I do that. And I'd like to start right off with, I guess, Michael Brown coverage. What do you make of it, Alan? What's going on with the Mike Brown thing, in your opinion?
You know, it's sad to me that we've seen this kind of behavior from a police department, that we clearly have a systemic problem, but we don't know all the facts yet. And I've seen people on both sides weighing in, determining either Michael Brown is a bad guy or the cop is a racist. I don't think we know the answer to either of those questions. The police department really bungled it, and when they, at the press conference announcing the name of the cop who did it, decided at the same time to show video of Brown in the middle of a robbery to show, see what a bad guy this is. They totally blew it. And I can understand why you had the community reaction you had.
Well, you know what's interesting too, Alan, is this. Whether Michael Brown was a petty thief or whether he did a few things here and there, if he used drugs or dabbled in whatever, the bottom line is those aren't capital crimes.
Sure. Doesn't mean you should die.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you should be shot by a cop.
Exactly. He didn't do anything, even if he had stolen a television and was running down the street with it. Stealing a TV is not a capital crime, and you don't deserve to die for it. You don't deserve to be shot for it. And as I understand it, he was shot multiple times. I'm correct on that, aren't I?
We had Michael Baden on my radio show, the medical examiner who did the second autopsy. He was shot at least 6 times. It's believed there were other shots that were scatter shots that went all over the place. We don't know why the shots were so poorly done. The rumor that the police officer was punched in the eye socket was never substantiated. They never provided any medical reports, if that's true. Again, so much of the reporting has been to presume one side or the other is correct, and we still don't know the facts. Furthermore, there was no police report. The Darren Wilson, the officer accused of the killing, never filed one, nor did the Ferguson Police Department. So lots of misconduct here.
Obviously, I mean, how can you have a shooting involving a police officer and not have a police report on it? That's astounding that there would be no police report on it. And that right there is cause for concern. Why is there not a police report on it?
That's a very good question, one that has to be answered by the Ferguson Police Department. The state police, the county police, turned in a piece of paper with basically no information on it because there was no incident report done, which is required by law. Again, will there be any accountability for this?
And you're talking about a shooting here. You're talking about someone being shot to death. There's only a few crimes that warrant the death penalty, murder being one of them. And young Mr. Brown, to my knowledge, did not commit murder, so therefore he was not eligible for the death penalty. What other things, Alan, would refresh my memory? What can get you the death penalty besides murder?
I'm not a death penalty advocate, so.
Well, I'm not either.
And other than murder, I don't know of any other crime that would qualify for the death penalty. In fact, usually it's multiple murders before you get death row.
Exactly, and here they are giving the death penalty out on the street, and everyone seems to take it as, just another day at the office for the police.
The other thing that Dr. Baden told me, which really was astounding, is that he left the body on the street for hours. Nobody collected the body. So here you had Michael Brown shot dead, lying on the street, nobody attending to the body. The police department not removing the body. There's no procedure in place in this police department for the misconduct is unbelievable.
So they didn't even put the tape around the body and make an area a homicide area to investigate?
I don't know whether an area was made, but the body was left lying on the street for hours before the body was taken away.
You know, Alan, that's about as good as when they killed Jack Kennedy.
Well, I mean, I know you've written about this.
No. Let me give you the example.
Yeah.
John Kennedy was killed inside the limo, right?
Yes.
Well, the first thing Lyndon Johnson, the next day, the limo was up in Pontiac, Michigan, being refurbished. It was never allowed to be looked at as a crime scene.
Yeah.
The limousine was a crime scene. It should have had the yellow tape around it, and no one should have been able to touch it until the investigators were through with it. Instead, Lyndon Johnson, the next day, that limousine's up in Pontiac, Michigan, being fully restored.
I was not aware of that, but if that's true...
That is true.
Unbelievable.
That's true.
Remarkable.
Yeah, Alan, that is completely true. You'll get no argument on that one.
Well, you have implicated Lyndon Johnson, and by the way, Roger Stone, who's written about the Kennedy assassination, who's a Republican, worked for Nixon, apparently agrees with much of what you've written.
Well, I haven't written that Johnson did it. Stone wrote that he actually did do it, and then I read another book that said he did. I didn't go that far. I didn't actually name people and say they did it, but I said these are all likely suspects.
Well, you put the pieces out there, and a lot of people assembled them in that way.
Sure, and they should, because there's so many of them. Anyway, continuing with the Brown thing, and I said it on my show and all that. Alan, do you agree with me that racism's alive and well in the United States and that we're sticking our head in the sand and somehow, because we have a black president today, we somehow believe racism has disappeared and that the days of the 60s are happily gone? I can assure people they haven't left.
A lot of people thought when we get a black president, we'll now be in a post-racial America. What it's really done is brought racists out of the woodwork. The idea that he's not born here, he's from someplace else, he's not one of us, he doesn't believe in American exceptionalism. Never mind, he's the only president who ever used that term. And the racists have been out in force since he's been president. So just like if we were to have a woman president, you'd see a great deal of misogyny. People can't handle what they're not used to. And you've got a country with tremendous racism. And in the last month, there have been about 4 or 5 young black teens that have been killed by cops. 4 or 5 in the last month. And then you have Ben Carson on Fox News Sunday debating with Jesse Jackson. And Ben Carson, the neurosurgeon who became famous and a conservative icon after he attacked Obama for health care at a prayer breakfast, which was supposed to be nonpartisan. And you've got Carson saying, well, race has nothing to do with what went on in Ferguson. Here's an African-American man who himself, I think, has benefited from his race, just as Clarence Thomas has, but in denial that racism or race itself plays a factor, sometimes positive, sometimes negative, but in denial about race being a factor.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, I lived through the 60s, and I saw great strides happen in race relations naturally during that era. You know, hopefully we don't have segregated drinking fountains anymore and things of that nature. But I've already gone on record, Alan, and said we still got a long way to go because this country is in denial. The white people of this country better realize something. Black people are here to stay. They're part of our country, and we better get used to it.
Well, by the year 2040, surveys show we'll no longer be a white majority country. So what you're seeing is the last gasp of angry old white men who are having a hard time accepting that they will no longer be the majority in this country within a very short period of time.
And, you know, I don't have a problem with it. One of the things that's been a tremendous help for me, for 8 years now, I've lived 850 miles down in Mexico for half the year where I'm the minority. By the way, Alan, you know what I call myself in Mexico? A guap. GWOP.
What does that mean?
Well, you remember when Italian Americans migrated here to Ellis Island, and many of them came without papers. So
yes.
The Italians got known as WOPs because they would put a sign on them, WOP, which stood for without papers.
Right.
Well, I go to Mexico many times, and I'm a guap. That's a gringo without papers.
You're living the good life in Mexico. But you're
they don't
right.
care. The great thing is, Alan, they don't care down in Mexico. All they care is I come down there, I spend pesos, I live there, I employ Mexicans, I help their economy survive, I create jobs down there with my off-the-grid show. So they don't give a damn whether I'm a guap or not.
And it should be. We're just going to have to, look, we're going to be a very different country in just a few years, and we are going to be a not majority white country. We may not be a majority Christian country at some point, and that really worries people. In the Republican Party, with Eric Cantor no longer being the House Majority Leader because he stepped down and he was not reelected, the Republicans don't have one person, neither House or the Senate, who is not a Christian. They only have one black in South Carolina who was appointed, Tim Scott, running and likely to be reelected. But the lack of diversity, particularly in the Republican Party, is astounding.
Well, it's like I said, and I agree with you that the white people of this country better realize that we're going to be a minority in years to come, and so what? That's my answer. So what?
Yeah, right, exactly. It's not a big deal
I could care
unless
less.
you focus on. It's only a big deal if you care about those kinds of things, but too many people do. Define you by what color your skin is.
Now let's move ahead, Alan. What do you make of this whole ISIS situation? Are they really the threat they're being built up, or are we just getting a prelude to martial law?
I think they're not at all the threat they're built up to be. There's an organization called Stratfor, which is a geopolitical analysis firm, and they are saying that ISIS couldn't even be able to take the Shiites in southern Iraq. They're an army of maybe 16,000. The Iraqi army is much bigger. They are not the threat they're purported to be. You had Senator Jim Inhofe of Oklahoma claiming on a local Oklahoma City show just a few days ago that they're going to take an American city. They are scaring people unnecessarily. They're playing the politics of fear. Didn't we learn this lesson before we went into Iraq the first time? We were told by Condoleezza Rice there'd be a mushroom cloud over the United States. When do we learn the lesson? Time after time. And I blame members of both parties for political purposes, revving up the fear of a group. Yes, they're terrible, terrible people who really need to be quartered. But is it our job to do it? That's the question. Why are we the world's cops? And if we are to do it, we should be doing it with international help, with the United Nations, not the solo world's policemen.
And not only that, we should be doing it being financed by the rest of the world and not with my tax dollars.
That's correct. We created ISIS by going into Iraq the first place.
Exactly.
Iraq was a safer country under Saddam Hussein. Clearly no angel, clearly a bad guy. We heard, he gassed the Kurds. Yeah, he gassed the Kurds in 1988 when Reagan was president, and nobody did anything about it. And then it was used justification 15 years later to go in and take out Saddam Hussein.
Alan, I got a good one I want to discuss with you. You just popped a good one into my head right now for the iPod. Why is it, Alan, that internationally it is illegal to use tear gas against our enemies at war, and yet we're perfectly allowed to use tear gas against our own people inside our country?
This is something else that came up on my radio show. I think it was with Dr. Bodden. The fact that these cops use tear gas, they use them against blacks. It's white cops using it against black citizens. And yes, they are against the rules of war, yet they're okay to be used domestically.
Why do we allow tear gas inside our country when we cannot use it at war against enemies outside our country? That, to me, the whole concept is absurd.
We have a government and a group of so-called peacekeepers worried about and fearful of their own citizens. Why is it that these police departments are over-militarized with old equipment from the Pentagon? Why are we sending to cops missiles and drones? And why are we sending cops AK-47 and all kinds of equipment that cops don't need?
Would you like Jesse's take on it for a second, Alan?
Yes.
I think that it's clearly in what happened at Boston Marathon and what's happening right in Minneapolis this whole last week in Minneapolis. We had black helicopters flying all over the city, and the government wouldn't say why. And they were disturbing people in the middle of the night. They were so loud and so low to the ground. And all they say was they were practicing operations. Alan, I think our country is preparing to implement martial law.
I don't think I think I have a hard time, Jesse.
Because let me tell you something. Having been in the military, practice, practice, practice. That's what government does. Why are we practicing all of these things that indicate martial law? Why would we be practicing? The Boston Marathon, we got the military turned loose on the streets. The McCain-Levin amendment to the defense bill, which now allows the U.S. military to operate freely inside the United States. If you start putting all those little pieces together, Alan, it becomes a scary picture that they are prepping, in my opinion, they are prepping with run-throughs, so if they indeed... Now, ISIS attacks us. Couple of bombs go off in a few cities, and we face a martial law lockdown.
Who would be behind this? Are you suggesting the president, the Pentagon?
I don't know.
Who's running it?
I don't know. Well, obviously our government.
But who?
That's why black helicopters are flying all over the Twin Cities at night for the last week and a half, and they won't say what the operation is. They won't say what they're preparing for. It's all national security.
It's if that's true, that's quite disturbing. But I can't imagine that we would stand for this kind of thing in America.
Well, and then, of course, tie that in with disarming us with the Second Amendment and abolishing that. It all fits in. I was in the Philippines. Physically, I was there the day Ferdinand Marcos became a dictator. You know what the first thing Ferdinand did? He gave the people a 10-day grace period to turn in all their guns or it was the death penalty. Now, why would a dictator make that his top priority?
Well, obviously for control, but I'm not with you on this one. I don't believe there's no effort to take guns away. I believe in gun registration, and there's in spite of what the right and the NRA have been saying, this president is not taking guns away, nor is the government. There's no effort to do that. There's no movement toward doing that. Almost every civilized country except for us does not have a gun culture the way we do.
Yeah, but, I'll counter back on you, Alan. There's been, I think in the last century, there have been 5 genocides committed in countries throughout the world. Every place where genocide is committed is a place that practices strict gun control, where the people cannot arm themselves. And that's where genocides happen.
You've got countries like Australia, like England, like Japan, where it's very, very difficult to get a gun. In Australia, you had both parties agreeing that was the case after a massacre years ago, and the murder rate has gone to almost nothing. We've seen much better results, crime results, when that's been the case in countries like Australia.
Really? Well, I got a note in front of me that says for Chicago, where crime is horribly bad, right? You'll agree? Chicago crime is bad?
Yep.
The Crime Prevention Research Center estimated that after concealed carry laws were passed, violent crimes decreased by 22%.
Could be, but,
what's the explanation
we need national
on that?
gun control
Wait a minute now. You got conceal and carry, people carrying concealed weapons, and crime goes down. By the analogy, shouldn't it go up?
I think we need national gun laws where there's no gun running from state to state, and if you didn't have guns available, period, like in Australia, like in England, you'd have a much lower homicide rate.
Yeah, but then, one of the things you got to remember, though, Alan, if you go back to World War II, Japan was going to invade the United States in World War II, but they chose not to. You know why? Because the citizens were armed.
They did attack Pearl Harbor.
They attacked Pearl Harbor, but they were going to invade our mainland. And they chose not to. Why? Because all our citizens were armed. And they knew that it would be a failure, that they could not invade the U.S. because the citizenry has guns.
I've not heard that, and the notion that the citizens having guns are going to ward off an invading superpower is absurd.
Oh, yes, it will. No, it's not absurd. Are you kidding? They would be fighting every civilian here also.
To have a group of civilians, a non-organized group of people, just leaving their front porches with their rifles to fight an organized invading army.
Really? Well, what was Vietnam?
Well, we invaded Vietnam.
Yeah. And who did we fight? We fought the locals who had nothing but a few guns. We dropped more ordnance on them than we did Europe, and we still couldn't beat them.
There was an army
All you had was a bunch of Asians in the rice paddies in their little hamlets called the Viet Cong, who were armed, and they fought off the entire U.S. military, and we won every battle, but we couldn't win the war.
They were an organized paramilitary group. We don't even have that.
Wait a minute. Excuse me. We would be too if it got to that point. If somebody was going to invade us, rest assured we would have a paramilitary civilian force out here. Anyway, we'll move on. You and I can talk gun control all we want, and we'll beg to differ.
Yes, sir.
On that, but that's fine. Now, Bill Gates donates $1 million for a gun control campaign?
That's right. He wants registration, as does Michael Bloomberg.
I know. That's why I don't vote for them.
Well, Bloomberg's not running, and neither is Bill Gates. But he's putting a lot of money. This is the first time that the NRA is being met on its own battlefield by people who've got as much funding as they do. I mean, the NRA is a group that buys off legislators, and they really represent more the gun manufacturers than gun users.
Yeah, but you know what, Alan? I think that before they do gun control here, that our government should set the example. If they want to set an example, we should stop manufacturing and selling arms throughout the world. That would be the first step. Alan, let's have our government do that before they start Bill Gates and worrying about doing gun control locally. Let's get our own government under control and stop making them the biggest gun dealer of the world.
Well, Bill Gates, as a private citizen, can do what he wants with his money, as can Michael Bloomberg, now that he's a private citizen. But you're right. We sell weapons around the world that often wind up in the hands of our enemies. When do we learn that lesson?
All of them do. Well, who's providing? That's the question I'd like answered. Who's providing all these sophisticated weapons to ISIS?
That's an excellent question. And whether they're appropriating it from other countries that I'd like to know how many of those weapons are American-made.
Yeah, I would too. See, that's blowback. That's part of our culture here of our government being the biggest gun dealer throughout the world. And that's the point I'm making. Let them clean up their backyard first before they start coming to me and telling me I got to clean up my backyard.
The government isn't taking your guns away. There may be a push for registration, which makes sense to me, but they're not taking your guns away.
Well, let me ask you this, Alan. What does registration do?
It lets you know where guns are, who's got them, who's capable of using them.
Wait, okay, so if you want to go get them, you'll know where to go, right?
Well, are people coming to take your car because you register your car?
No. I'm just saying, hypothetically, that's what it's for, right? So you can know where all the guns are, so that if you needed to, you could go there and have an account list and know how many you get from this house, correct?
Theoretically, you're right, but whether or not
I
don't believe that is the goal.
That's theoretically what I don't like about it, because it's none of their damn business.
But any more than the government's going to take your car away because you register your car, they're not going to come and take your guns away.
They'll take your car away. They take possessions all the time from people.
Well, your car can be impounded if you don't pay. Your car can be towed if it's in a no parking zone. But they don't just come and take cars away from people.
Well, wait a minute. Or if you're in your car and you have a joint, they can take your car.
I don't know that they can take your car for a joint.
They can. Oh, yes, they can, technically. Yes, if you have an illegal drug, they can confiscate your car if you're in your car.
Okay, but that's not the same thing as the government coming and removing cars simply because cars are registered and the government rounding up automobiles because they can.
Okay. Well, but again, like I said, that's why I don't like the registration part, because then everyone knows what I have, and I don't think everyone has a right to know what I own.
Well, the government already knows so much about you that you probably wish they didn't. They know your Social Security number. They know, go down the list of things. They have your driver's license.
But they don't know how many weapons I have. They don't know because mine are not registered.
I believe we're moving toward registration, and I think it'll be positive. We're not going to agree on this one.
Just don't come and ask me to register mine.
So you would break the law and not register?
I would never tell anybody what I have. That's no one's business but mine. How is that your business, what I own, in a gun safe in my basement?
When guns are used the way they're used in this country to kill so many people, and there's so many accidental deaths and misuse, and people who shouldn't have them because they're not mentally well enough to have them, it becomes a national problem.
It's kind of like the Ebola virus, right? Ebola, when it initially hit, there were 900 and some people dead from it, right?
That's what we heard.
Yeah, and I right away on my show said, well, how come we're up in arms over that? How many people died from drunk driving last year? And we looked it up, it was 10,000. 10,000 people last year died from drunk driving, and yet we're in a frenzy over Ebola?
There was a lot of misinformation about Ebola. That, for example, you can't catch it over the air.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know all that, Alan. But the point I'm making is, how come we don't have such a focus on drunk driving?
We should. We do. There are groups like Mothers Against Drunk Driving that do that.
Yeah, I know. But still, 10,000 a year die. 10 times more than die from Ebola.
The Ebola, I think, has also been used to scare us with a lot of misinformation about how it's caught.
Oh, I agree, too. We get no argument on that because Ebola's dangerous, but it's not like what they're making it out to be. Now, I got questions. Rand Paul goes after Hillary Clinton. Senator Rand Paul slammed a member of the monarchy, former Secretary of State's Hillary Clinton, calling her a war hawk. Clinton recently apologized for her decision to support the invasion of Iraq, but of course she's a war hawk. Don't you think she'd be taking more of an aggressive approach on Iraq than Obama right now?
I think she would be, and it concerns me. Not only that, she criticized Obama for not going into Syria sooner, and yet why she's doing it now, I have no idea. It's wrong timing. It's not appropriate. We know at some point, if she decides to run, which I'm not sure she will have to distance herself from Obama in some way, but not now and not in the middle of this crisis. But she had to make the statement that in an interview just a couple of weeks ago that it was wrong or Obama has not been aggressive enough in Syria. I don't think Rand Paul is terribly off the mark in that she is a more aggressive, more militaristic, more hawkish than President Obama is.
No, what troubles me about all this is why are we constantly at war, Alan?
We agree on this one.
I'm 63 years old now. I'm 63 years old now, and if you count the failed war on drugs as a war, which indeed it is, because thousands die in Mexico on the war on drugs every year, we've been at war my entire life. And does anyone really believe if Hillary gets elected and we get our first woman president, will the policy be any different because she's a woman? Absolutely not.
I don't know who makes these decisions to go to war because I voted for it twice, an anti-war president. And we've had war with Libya. We're now in northern Iraq. We increased our troops before allegedly withdrawing them in Afghanistan at the end of 2014. We had the surge. Now we have drones flying over Syria as of today, talking about a possible invasion there. I voted for a guy who was against all this stuff, and this kind of involvement, which is American treasure, American dollars. We bankrupted the country by our reaction to 9/11, exactly what the terrorists wanted, years of war, bankrupting our treasury, and the country having irrational reaction to a couple of hundred guys with box cutters on a plane. This is not to diminish the lives of those who were killed, but we have killed more people, including civilians, in our war in Iraq than died at 9/11.
And not only that, Alan, let me ask you this, and I know I'm nitpicking here. How did they come up with box cutters when everyone was dead?
That's a good question.
Where did that come? I've asked that question for ages. I said, where did this box cutter come from? Everybody was killed. How did they hijack who determined that box cutters were used to hijack the planes?
That's a really good question, and that's a good question that should be answered.
Yeah, but good luck. You ain't going to get nobody to answer nothing on 9/11. I've tried, And there's all sorts of questions like that out there that don't make any sense, and yet they're now history. The planes were hijacked with box cutters. And like I said, how do we know they were used box cutters? Everybody's dead.
Well, we don't know. In other words, what you're saying is we don't know that there were not weapons on the plane, but
we don't even know who hijacked the planes because look at when they came out with the list of 19, Alan. 4 or 5 of them are still alive.
They had some
Did you
names
know
wrong,
that?
obviously. Yep.
Yeah, 4 or 5 of them said, I wasn't on the plane. I'm over here in Saudi Arabia. What the hell are you talking about?
Some of that's attributed to misspellings and getting names wrong, and flight lists that don't match up to the way names are spelled.
Alan, you won't step as far as to say that maybe they've lied to us about 9/11?
I'm not a truther on 9/11. I can't
Wait a
imagine.
minute. Wait here now. Now you're leading to the next thing. Why have we allowed mainstream media to morph the word truth into being bad? So in other words, liar is good. That's the opposite. So if you're a liar like Dick Cheney and George Bush, you're good. But if you're a truther, you're bad.
I think the word is used sarcastically.
Well,
with
I'd like to
tongue-in-cheek.
know, well, it shouldn't be, because the word truth should be good. And we've allowed, like I've been accused, here's something that pisses me off. I've been called a 9/11 truther. I've never joined any organization. I don't belong to 9/11 Truth. I do my own independent research. I come to my own independent conclusions. And yet I'm now labeled by your own network. Bill O'Reilly called me a 9/11 truther.
The word truther has been used generically to apply to those, regardless of organizations or not, who believe that the government, our government, was somehow involved in preparing 9/11. That's a generic term. And the word truth, of course, with tongue-in-cheek, because there's no truth that's been proven that that's the case. There's no proof of that.
There's been no proof that 19 Islamic radicals armed with box cutters conspiring with a bearded guy in a cave in Afghanistan's the truth either, is there?
Well, to
wait
the
a
best
minute,
of knowledge,
is there?
Alan,
I think there has been no trial. They've got Khalid Sheikh Mohammed down there allegedly confessing to 9/11. Bring him up here and try him. Let's see the truth. Let's see the
I agree
facts.
with you on
Let's
that.
see the evidence. We don't
I
get
agree with
no
you on the
evidence.
trials. Yep.
You know?
Get them out
Good.
of let's stop holding people in Gitmo. Put them in New York City in federal court, as they have with some of the accused terrorists, and they've had more success doing that than they've had with military tribunals.
Do you know why that's not going to happen, Alan?
Tell me.
They got no evidence to convict any of them.
Well, also, they tortured people, and it's not admissible in a court.
Right, but evidence. They don't want to try these guys because they'll lose. Did you ever think of that?
Well, I think they would lose.
Wait, and then when they lose, who do they blame 9/11 on then?
Well, I think if they lose, it's because they use techniques to extract information that are not admissible in a court of law.
But wait a minute. This should be a slam dunk. We went to 2 wars over 9/11. It should be a slam dunk.
I'd say bring them to New York and try them, absolutely.
Well, they can't. They got no evidence. Just like when, you want to hear an interesting thing, Alan? I don't know if I ever told you this. When I was investigating for conspiracy theory, we actually called the FBI because on the FBI's website, this is before bin Laden was killed, they had bin Laden listed as one of the top, you could go get the top 10 terrorists, and of course bin Laden's on the list. We pulled it up. It listed the attack on the ship, the USS Cole. It listed the attacks on the embassies, but it didn't list nothing about 9/11 on the FBI's official website on bin Laden. And we inquired. We said, well, why isn't 9/11 included? They wouldn't say anything, but you know what they said off the record?
What's
we
that?
don't have enough evidence. I was astounded. I thought, you don't have enough evidence, yet we went to 2 wars over this?
Right.
And you don't have enough evidence to include 9/11 on bin Laden's own bio? That doesn't
And
cause
we're fighting
you
these wars
concern?
years later. We're in Afghanistan for 12 years. We went to Iraq that had nothing to do with 9/11. We're still in Iraq. ISIS arose out of
So Alan, doesn't that make you a little bit start to question 9/11?
I can't go where you are on that. I just don't.
Why?
It just makes no sense.
Why? Explain to me why.
If the government were involved, if it were some kind of plot that Americans knew about ahead of time, would it not have leaked out? Would they been able to keep it as quiet that nobody spoke, nobody talked about it?
Yes. You want to know why? The Manhattan Project. There's your example. The Manhattan Project, when we created the atomic bomb, over 100,000 people worked on that project, yet nobody knew it until the bomb landed in Hiroshima. Total secret. 100,000 people worked on the Manhattan Project, and yet it was kept secret until the bomb hit Japan. It's so compartmentalized. You only need a handful of people to know the big picture. The rest of them, no need to know. Just like I had a friend, I can now speak about it. He was a member of Dick Marcinko's Elite SEAL Team 6 when in the mid-'80s when they had the arms for hostages. He was sitting at home in his living room, Alan, when that broke, and he was astounded. He said, "Oh, God, I was part of that." He didn't know. It's all compartmentalized. He was just told to deliver something from point A to point B. Well, that's how you get away with it. Anyway, enough of that, Alan. We're winding down now, and we're now going to subject you, Alan Colmes, to what we do every guest on for the people. Are you ready? It's 5 quick questions. Okay, here we go. It's 5 quick questions. Give me straight Alan and keep it light and fun. The question deal with, Alan, it's time to play our game. It's called If I Were President. Okay. So now Alan Colmes is the president. Question number 1. First thing you do in the Oval Office, Alan?
Probably get some cooler furniture, more modern. Get rid of that old Victorian look and just modern the place up. And, Alan, a better throw rug.
You know what? I've done this with 3 or 4 other people, and you know what their response was? And I can't believe it. All 4 of them legalized marijuana.
Okay.
that was 3 or 4 different guests said the first thing they do in the Oval Office is legalize pot.
I would do. I would change the architecture of the Oval Office, but or at least the designing of it. But then, yes, maybe the second thing I do would be legal. I'd legalize all drugs.
Okay, there you go. Okay, question number 2. President Colmes, who's the first person you'd hire?
I'd hire you.
Really?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you'd get to the bottom of things. You know how things work. You'd be able to work. I'm even making my VP.
Okay. But that would marginalize me. VPs don't do nothing.
I know. You wouldn't want that job. That's not big enough for you.
No, I wouldn't mind it. All you got to do is sit at the observatory and hang out and go to funerals. You get paid.
I go to state funerals, right.
Anyway, question 3. Which federal agency would you abolish?
That's a good question. I don't know that I'd abolish a federal agency. I don't know of any that I know that's a knee-jerk answer many people would give. I do away with education, health, education, and welfare. Maybe the Department of the Interior. I don't really know what they do.
All right. See, I would, if I had that question, I would abolish the Department of Education. Because having been a governor, I know that governors can take care of educations within their own state. And if a state falls behind or something, that's their fault. That's the state's
actually,
fault.
I upon further thinking, I'd abolish the faith-based office of the White House, if there even still is one, since religion should not be part of government.
Very good. That's a good answer, too. I like that one. Question number 4. Alan Colmes, you're the president. Who would you invite to a White House state dinner? Anyone in the world to a White House state dinner. Who would you invite?
I'd invite the Pope. I'd invite Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr. I'd invite...
Wait a minute. That's 2 Beatles. You'd have to get Keith Richards in there to balance it.
All right, I go with Keith, absolutely. And Bill Gates and Warren Buffett.
Okay. Now, final question, number 5. Which comedian would you pick for your first White House Correspondents' Dinner?
Seinfeld.
Okay, that ends. Now we go to our final segment, which is social media questions from the fans. In our closing statement, Alan, we've pulled some questions from fans on social media. Some are tougher than others. Here we go. Jay Conrad on Facebook asks, why do you pretend that there is a 2-party system when it is blatantly obvious that we have a dictatorship masquerading as a duopoly?
I don't believe we live in a dictatorship. And I will agree that the 2 parties are too close for comfort. And I represent myself much more as a liberal than as a Democrat. But Democrats are much closer to where I want to be than Republicans are. But to say we're a dictatorship, absurd.
Marlena Fearing on Facebook asks, you appear to be a common sense kind of guy. So how do you survive in that environment at the Fox network?
I hide under my desk.
Michael Campbell on Twitter asks, what are the odds of ISIS destroying a U.S. city soon?
I think, as we talked about earlier, that's complete fear-mongering. Before that would ever come near to happening, I'm sure that we would have protected our homeland. And this is the kind of fear put out by Jim Sensenbrenner, Jim Inhofe of Oklahoma, simply to rev up the base and try to make the case that somehow Obama isn't doing enough, and said purely for political purposes. Absurd.
Matt Kalman on Twitter wants to know, and I like this one, I'll be interested with this one. What are your opinions on the JFK assassination, and do you feel the media community is afraid to talk about it?
I don't know. We've heard so many theories. Obviously, you and I have talked about this. We mentioned Roger Stone. So much has gone on for so many years with so many different theories that I don't know what I think about it. I honestly don't know. Do I think Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone? That seems unlikely. Warren Commission seemed to be a sham. But do I have the answer? No, I don't.
Here's one I know you're going to answer yes to. Rick Bisson on Facebook asked, do you support medical marijuana federally?
Yes. There
you go. I knew you'd answer yes on that. I even support recreational marijuana federally.
I support legalization of all drugs, period.
J.R. Wyatt on Facebook wants to know, regardless of party, do you see all future presidents having to deal with the mess in the Middle East?
I'd like to say no, but every president has had to deal with it. I don't see any end in sight. We have a ceasefire as we speak, but by the time people listen to this, that could change. So I fear that the answer is yes.
Jesse Ventura as president, you wouldn't have to fear that because I follow Christopher Columbus's teachings. Remember Columbus when he discovered America for the Anglo-Saxon European world?
Sure.
What was his job? He was trying to find another way to India, avoiding the Middle East, and he was willing to fall off the earth because they believed it was flat. So Columbus was willing to defy science, and he'd rather fall off the earth than go through the Middle East to get to India. I say pull out of the Middle East, leave it unto themselves, and have no more contact over there at all.
Sounds good to me. Ronald Reagan, when we had the barracks was attacked in Lebanon, and Marines were killed, he pulled out and said, we don't belong there. He'd be called a cutter and runner in today's world.
Absolutely. Ronald Reagan did the smart move. He cut and ran. Final one. Greg on Facebook wants to know, who's your favorite U.S. president and why?
I think Bill Clinton in my lifetime, did a great job. I mean, a lot of people say FDR, but I wasn't around then. Bill Clinton was great for the economy. The economy was humming along. He did get us involved, although he did a few excursions, but we're not involved in foreign wars. He raised the employment rates for Hispanics, for blacks. Really, I think, although he's not defined as a progressive, but really helped move the country forward. Don't agree with everything he did, but I wouldn't say that about any president. I've hoped that Barack Obama could be an answer to that question, but I think that legacy is still being written.
I go with John Kennedy, and you know what my reasoning is?
What's that?
He's the greatest president because they killed him quick, because he was the best president. That's why he couldn't even serve out one term. They had to get rid of him. There would have been no Vietnam had Kennedy stayed in office. Détente with the Soviets and Khrushchev would have happened. The Cold War would have ended, and we wouldn't have gone through that entire period. There are so many things the world would have changed had Jack Kennedy been allowed to finish his first term, and certainly he would have been elected to a second term. Had Jack Kennedy got his 8 years in, the world as we know it would be a totally different place today, and I firmly believe that.
I think you're right on that one.
Kennedy was our greatest president because they allowed him to serve the least amount of time. The good ones, they got to get rid of, and that's what they did. Anyway, Alan, thank you very much for coming on with me today. I appreciate it very, very much, and good luck to you, and I'll look forward to doing your show out there in New York again.
See you soon, Jesse. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Alan. That's it for today. And I want to thank my guest, Alan Colmes, for joining me on this edition of We the People podcast. Listen to Alan, of course, on the Alan Colmes radio show, and check out his website, alan.com. And as always, people, stay vigilant.
This is Corolla Digital.